Hello and welcome to the 27 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1 Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Today's episode brought to us by our good friends at Wilson. If you're coming to Omaha for the finals, you want to get over there and visit the Omaha Experience right across from the ballpark in the Village. You'll find Evo Shield, Louisville Slugger, DeMarini, Wilson, all under one roof. Limited edition gloves, bats, gear, and more. It's available only during the Men's College World Series. So if you're coming out for the finals, which I anticipate a lot of people are, this Aggies and Vols matchup is very, very spicy. Make sure you get over to the Village, check out the Wilson area. It is just their incredible swag over there. For today's show, joined by my three amigos, Aaron J. Fitt, Kendall J. Rogers, Joseph J. Healy. Gentlemen, greetings and salutations. How we doing? How we feeling? Fitzy, how you feeling?
Coach, I've never been better. I'm fired up. It's been a restful morning here. We got 2 off days. We're trying to figure out what to do with ourselves, but no place I'd rather be than here in the live stream with you fine gentlemen.
Yeah. Joe, you have had a lot to say about mini golf, putt. Are you some type of shark? Is there something? Do you have a history on the short golf courses of America?
I've played plenty of them. Certainly no shark. I mostly was drawn in by the $5 24-ounce draft beers, if I'm being honest.
That's not to like about
that. But no, it looks like a lot of fun, and why the heck not? As Aaron said, we got 2 days off here. You gotta do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can't be afraid to compete. So
that's right.
KR, how are you doing? How are you doing having your alma mater in the finals?
We're doing all right. It's been a long trip here. We got the Rogers plan coming up tomorrow, so it should be a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. Was that planned all the
That was not planned.
Oh, it's because of the Ags.
Well, the kids, they want to see A&M.
Yeah, heck yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
My wife's a Longhorn fan, so it's not her.
Oh, wow.
Look out.
Oh boy, let's just let that lay right there. Gosh, I don't even want to get into that. A Bobcat who's a Longhorn fan. That sounds complex. Boys, we have a triple header to review from yesterday, so let's go ahead and do that. So the first game was Florida against Kentucky. Florida 15, Kentucky 4. Who wrote that one up? Who wrote that story? Joe, Kendall,
Coach Healy.
Joe, you want to take us through that ball game, please?
Yeah, it got out of hand quickly. Florida was ready to go. The Kentucky's Achilles heel just propped up at the wrong time. Dom Nyman couldn't get out of the first. Kentucky really couldn't stop the bleeding, and it just got out of hand really, really quickly. It did set up Florida fairly well from a pitching standpoint. Now, as we'll talk about moving forward, it didn't necessarily help them in the end, but they were able to save some bullets for the regional or the bracket final game. And then from Kentucky's standpoint, you're always disappointed to get eliminated here. There's really no way around that. But, I don't think we can underestimate how much of a program-altering season this was for those guys. Kentucky's no longer, and as I wrote after the game yesterday, Kentucky's no longer a place where you can say, well, you just can't win big there. You just can't go to Omaha there. It's the kind of place where you could say, well, you just can't build a baseball culture there. Because, we saw the crowds at Kentucky Broad Park in the regionals and super regionals. That program really got their fans on board, unlike anything we've seen before at that program. So they broke down a lot of barriers this season for Kentucky. And look, that it doesn't guarantee anything moving forward because the SEC is what it is. But certainly this performance went a long way towards changing perceptions of the UK program forever.
Kendall and Fitzy, and Kendall, I'll go to you first.
Sure.
Here's the question that's top of mind for me with Kentucky. Is this sustainable? Like Joe's point's well taken. Hey, like Omaha, they didn't just like have a miracle run to Omaha, right? Like they just flat earned Omaha over a 2-year period, I would argue. But is this sustainable? What say you, KR?
Getting to Omaha every year is UK sustainable, probably not. But being a consistent team that's in the mix for regional host, absolutely. I think if you look at the program that Nick has built there, they schedule incredibly well. They do their research on who they should schedule non-conference. And if you look at what they've done in the portal, they do a great job evaluating guys out of the portal. They're doing it again. I think they already have like 7 or 8 commits. Joe can correct me on that, but I think they already have like 7 or 8 transfer portal commits who, by the way, are all older guys. So they know the formula. Like they're probably not going to out-recruit Tennessee, Vanderbilt, schools like that for high school kids in the area. So what they're doing is they're filling a lot of their gaps with older guys with a lot of experience. So they know the formula they need. The other thing for me that's really interesting is there was a point in time where we thought, Tennessee, when they got to Omaha for the first time under Tony, you're like, okay, like, are they about to go on a roll here? Or is just kind of a blip on the radar screen? And maybe that's the way we should view Kentucky, because if you look at their facility, they've got a great facility. I actually think that Kentucky's perfectly located. You can recruit Chicago. You can recruit the upper Midwest. You can go down south. You've got a national brand in terms of athletics as a whole. And you've got a great ballpark. And by the way, your fans, it took a while, but your fans put 6,000, 7,000 people at Kentucky Proud Park for the postseason. So I feel like Kentucky has some staying power here.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Fitzy.
And the way I see it, for years, it felt like Louisville was kind of running that region. I mean, they were getting all the
Yeah.
guys they wanted. They had that recruiting base in Chicago and through the Midwest. And it felt like, that was, they were winning those recruiting battles. And now you got to wonder at this point, how are things going to shape up going forward on that front? Because it feels like right now, Kentucky's probably a more desirable place to go play. You're in the SEC, you got this elite facility, you're coming off an Omaha run, there's energy there. So yeah, I'm certainly optimistic for the future. Louisville proved that you can build a sustainable Omaha caliber program. I mean, they went a number of times, right, under Dan McDonnell in the same geographic footprint. So why can't Kentucky? I do think that one thing to keep in mind is sometimes you get this special core group of players that, and we saw that with South Carolina with the Michael Roth, Matt Price era, the Wingos and all those guys, just kind of Adrian Morales, just had the right group of winning players. And, they have not been able to kind of bring that back. I mean, really since 2012, the last time South Carolina's been to Omaha, with Kentucky now, I mean, with the Petrays and the Devin Burks and the, Grant Smiths, these kind of core guys that are just foundational, larger than life, I think, figures for the history of this program. What will it look like once those guys are gone? And I think that's one thing to keep in mind is just sometimes that one group of players just elevates the whole program, but it doesn't necessarily sustain. So that's maybe my caveat, and just the fact that the SEC is so competitive. But that said, for all the reasons we've talked about, there's a lot to like about where they are and the direction they're headed.
Yeah, and just the velocity with which that league sprints ahead is
Yeah.
incredible. Go ahead, Joe.
I think my last thought on this is that one of the things they're going to have to contend with moving forward is they're going to have access, because of this run, they're going to have access to a higher level of player than they've had access to, at least for some period of time, right? And when you've been built the way Kentucky's been built the last several years, it's all about finding the exact right fit for what you're trying to do. And when you start to get access to a higher level of player, you do have to kind of balance, well, do we get this more talented guy, or do we go with guys we're more comfortable with? And I kind of think I know which way Kentucky's going to lean on that, just based on how they build things. But it can be, there's a little bit of a siren song where it's like, hey, this is a guy who wouldn't have given us the time of day 3 years ago, and now he's really seems interested in us. How much do you put into trying to bring that guy on board versus falling back on similar guys to what you've recruited before? And it's just tempting, and it's not so easy to make the decision to just keep doing what you're doing when maybe you do have some guys knocking on your door who didn't used to.
Well said. Joe, siren song, by the way, the early favorite for phrase of the day. Is that siren, SIREN, or is that like what? How do we spell? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
I'll be Googling that post show. Well done. That didn't come up in any of my accounting classes
You know,
in
you gotta-
college, Fitzy.
Get to brush up on your Greek mythology, coach, and your epics.
do.
Your epics.
Yes, let's get after the epics summer reading list. Hey, one thing I want to say before we move on, Brody Donay, I see you. I like it. Just reminds me of Butch Mitch Thompson's great quote that players are allowed to get better. On March 12th of this year, I think many of us watched Florida State hammer Florida in a midweek game. Brody Donay that night was 0 for 4 with 4 punch outs. And I mean, he was missing baseballs by 6 feet. Like it was like struggle bus like you've never seen. He did not catch well that night. And I was thinking, man, this kid transferring from Virginia Tech to Florida, like this is not going to work. And yesterday in this game, 3 for 5 with two home runs, and like good on you, Brody Donay. Like because I wrote you off on March 12th, and really cool to see him. Like, are there question marks about him as a defensive catcher? Sure, right? He's thrown out one base runner all year, but man, like he became a serviceable, scary piece. Then he hit a home run in the Clemson Super Regional.
Yeah.
So there you go, Brody Donay.
He's always had the raw power, and boy, he looked the part last summer in the Cape. I thought he was going to be a guy. It took a while to get there, like you said, that swing and miss piece. But yeah, he's formidable out here.
Yep. Yeah, that's well done, Brody Donay. Peoples, throughout the College World Series, throughout the summer, all year round, D1Baseball.com is your home for the most in-depth college baseball news, updates, scores, and rankings. Get game analysis, series previews, transfer portal updates, and so much more. Visit D1Baseball.com today. If you type in bracket 30 at checkout, you'll get 30% off, and that's D1 baseball subscription, SEC extra subscription. If you type in siren song, something good could happen there too. Who knows? You never know. Never know until you try. Boys, game 2 yesterday was Tennessee 7, Florida State 2, propelling the Vols to the finals and ending Florida State season. Who wrote that game, Gamer?
I did.
Go ahead, KR.
I thought the storyline of the game was Xander Sechrist. It's kind of funny. Aaron and I were talking about this yesterday on group chat, but like, you remember earlier this year, I think it was maybe mid-March, late March, we talked about Xander Sechrist being like a key part of Tennessee's rotation, and I think we all were kind of like, okay, is that sustainable? Like, is this really a thing? And I tell you what, since that start he had against Georgia, where Condon went 0-4, and I think he got 2 runs of 6 innings against Georgia's offense at Lindsey Nelson. Since that point, they've been able to extend him out, and I thought he looked excellent yesterday. Mixed and matched his pitches really well. The curveball. I kind of wrote this, but like, he's one of those guys that you think the radar gun's broken because you look up on the board and it says 69-71. You don't see that very often, especially from an SEC pitcher. And so he's a little unorthodox, but I tell you what, man, he just really commands that upper 80s fastball well, and then those 2 breaking balls he has. So I thought he was the story. Florida State. I think the biggest thing for them is obviously a great year. I mean, Link is a superstar, and we all kind of thought they would bounce back after last year. They obviously bounced back. They got to Omaha. I think the biggest thing with them is I think their offense throughout this World Series looked really good. For the most part, they had a couple of unlucky, hits yesterday to where the wind kind of caught it going across the field. It didn't fly to left field very much. But overall, I thought FSU's defense, base running, those 2 things, and I think Aaron pointed out coming into the tournament, their defense have been excellent. But I thought their defense and their base running was very, very iffy in this World Series. And ultimately, it cost them. I mean, look at the first game.
Yeah, the base running in particular, several very big mistakes on that end. Ultimately, I just think Tennessee was better. And, that rally, the first time that they played Florida State was just a lot of hard contact. It wasn't really like poor defense that led to that at the end of the game. It was just a lot of hard contact. Florida State was just a little light on the mound, and that happens when you lose Gavin Adams and Cam Leiter, 2 guys. Like, imagine if they still had those 2 guys who were healthy. Like, heading into the year, that was the plan. It was those 2 guys and Jamie Arnold, and we're talking about potentially the best rotation in the country from a talent perspective if all those guys stay healthy, and they didn't. And they had to kind of figure it out, piece it together without him. And Whitaker, Connor Whitaker missing a good chunk of time in the middle of the year as well. And I think they have a lot to be proud of, getting to Omaha, getting the Final Four. It's really I think I tweeted yesterday that they feel like they've been reestablished as a superpower. And I say that, and I know it's only 1 year and they're coming off a last place finish, but they're not going away. I mean, especially you're going to get, you assume you get Leiter and Adams healthy next year with Arnold. All right, now you might have the best rotation in the country. You've still got, I think, a potentially elite infield there with Drew Farrow coming back and Alex Lodis, and then I think Cal Fisher is going to be a guy who's going to be a really good Seminole now that he's going to get an opportunity to play more often. Really excited about his future. So I think the foundation is there, and obviously so much will change based on what all these teams do in the portal. But the foundation is there for them to be right back here next year. And under Link Jarrett, I think they're going to be a perennial Omaha kind of a program. So this was huge for them to reestablish themselves.
Yep. What say you, Joe?
I say that it's great that Guy McDade on Facebook says hello from Scotland. That's
Amazing.
the most important thing to bring up,
Oh,
which begs
Guy.
the question. We're going to go around the room. Rangers or Celtic? Just let's go around the room. Runes, you first.
Celtic.
Yeah.
Celtic.
Aaron, Rangers or
For
Celtic?
sure. I mean, definitely. Is it
Kendall,
Celtic or
Rangers
Celtic?
or
It's Celtic, right?
Yeah.
Who could say?
Sure.
Kendall, who you got?
I don't know. What was the other one?
Kendall's not having this nonsense. Move
Memphis
on.
Showboats.
I'm a Rangers guy. Rangers FC. What were we talking? Yeah, I continually kind of am impressed with Tennessee after they got whatever the first 5 innings of that first game against Florida State were. When they got that out of their system, they've been excellent, right? I mean, clutch hitting, the pitching is set up perfectly. Like, honestly, they're in the rare spot where they've played 3 games here and probably have guys they wish would have gotten more work, right? Which is like nobody else seems like they can say that ever. And then they're in really good shape there. And I'm with you on Florida, the sentiments on Florida State generally. It was good to see them back at this stage. That's a big time baseball brand that it felt like one of those programs that, frankly, we've seen too many of the last 15 years of kind of an austere college baseball program that is just going to kind of slowly fade. And maybe they have some runs left in them, but they just aren't what they used to be. Well, sure, they did take a dip, but maybe now it's better than ever. So, and Link Jarrett, to his credit, has said a lot of things about how important it is for him to kind of finish the job that Mike Martin started there. And so I think Mike Martin would be proud of this team, understanding what they had to deal with on the mound and fighting through that. And I'm excited to see what's next for this group, because I'm with you, Aaron, that I think that this is kind of only just the beginning for them, or at least I hope that's the case moving forward.
I'll tell you what I would say that it's interesting about Florida State. I think we all agree that Link is just, he's going to be the guy that's going to win and bring the national title that he feels like he owed Mike Martin as a player. He was on 3 Omaha teams for Mike Martin as a player. By the way, Fitzy, Joe just absolutely running the score up on you, just dropped an austere in there.
I don't know if he used it right, though. I challenge.
I might not have. But I mean, we're just gonna the play already. We continued the play. It's too late to challenge.
Yeah. What do you say, Fitzy? Play on, no play.
No play.
No play. Yeah. So well done, Joe.
We already snapped the ball. You cannot challenge.
Yeah. Too late. So well done. Look at Coach Healy running it up. But I think with Florida State, it was interesting to see them not fundamentally sound at all yesterday. Like Max Williams, if he sprints on that ground ball, like the score ends up being 7-2, but it was 6-2 late. Well, what if it's 4-2 and the pressure of the game flips over to Tennessee? So then it gets me thinking, like, was this team not fundamentally sound in that game because just the tension, the stress of 9 tournament games where, that's a lot. For a team, even the blowout against Connecticut for Florida State, like it sounded like it was hot as blazes on that field, and there's the pressure of the pregame. And was it that Florida State looked worn down to me, or is it the fact that he had a lot of transfers on the field, and these transfer players are not fully acclimated to Link Jarrett the way they're going to play? So it's a lot to chew on in the offseason, but I think Link Jarrett had to replace his coaching staff, and they end up in Omaha after being last place, as you said, Fitzy. I mean, this dude can flat out coach. And, Florida State is a program that's got a lot going for it, obviously, location-wise, just history. That I'm certain they want their facility to keep improving. I'm certain they want their NIL situation to improve, etc. But, boy, it's a great starting place. No question about it.
And just back to Tennessee for a second. Kendall's right. I thought the Seacrest points were great. Again, we keep going back to this. You can still win in Omaha, especially with these pitchability lefties, right? And we saw, a bunch of these teams out here, Evan Blanco and Shea Sprague and Seacrest. Now, those guys are more changeup guys. Seacrest's more of a funky kind of bigger breaking ball guy, 2 different breaking balls. But it just we talk a lot about power arms, and power arms do matter in Omaha. I do think you got to have them. But to have that lefty who can go out there without big velocity and give you 6 good innings, I mean, we see that every year out here. It's just that's timeless.
Yeah, I just think for Tennessee. Oh, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
It was a big day for Seacrest for representing for guys who wear their caps with the band flipped up in the back. and also pitchers that have like what might be deemed like an unnecessary head whack whenever they go to deliver the ball. Like just a big day for those, kind of small niche groups of pitchers.
Yeah, I would prefer the group with the head wearing their hat like that, Joe, to be underrepresented forever. Like we need that group to vanish. That's just an awful look. But hey, I wanted to say this about Tennessee, and we'll get a chance to talk about them a lot as we preview the finals. Like, Blake Burke and Christian Moore and Billy Amick had 7 hits, and like they're just a nightmare to like. That's how you start your game pitching against Tennessee, is those 3 monsters, and it just never stops. And as you guys said, Tennessee looks like they're on a mission, and it's one of the great 4-year runs that I can remember in college baseball, in recent modern college baseball. Like, the bad season, because it didn't end in Omaha, was 57 wins. I mean, they are on some kind of heater. Let's before we get to the A&M Florida game, you can hear more from D1 Baseball with the D1 Baseball podcast all year round. It's the 4 of us breaking down teams, talking to coaches, keeping you updated on all things college baseball. You can hear exclusive SEC content with the great Marcus Aurelius and Joe Healy. That's Mark Etheridge. Highway to Hoover podcast, ACC content with the ACC Baseball Etc. podcast. That's Danny Graves and Darren Vaught. Download the D1 Baseball podcast. It's part of the SiriusXM podcast network. Right now on the SiriusXM app or wherever you get your podcast, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a minute. We don't want to miss any minutes. Who wrote up? Fitzy, did you write up the Ags?
Yeah, I did. I wrote up the Ags.
Know your beats. Look at you all over the Ags beat.
All over it. Here's the thing that I basically wrote. It's just, it kind of defies logic. It feels like it should defy logic that this team just keeps on winning in the face of these injuries. No Shane Sadeo, their number 2 starter, no Raid Montgomery, a superstar, first round pick, outfielder. You got Chase Lavalette all clearly playing way below 100%, and you could see it, trying to catch a fly ball out there, and he just kind of had to ease off it. He just, not close 100%. And he's, again, a superstar player. Jackson Appel's banged up. They got all this stuff going on, and they just keep on going out there and out executing, out teaming, as Coach Schlossnagel put it. They out team their opponents, and they just keep winning the battle of the strike zone. And that's really the key for who they are. I mean, I think they lead the country in walks. That just always shows up. I mean, it doesn't, maybe Montgomery's gone, maybe you got, whatever, some guys less than 100%. They're still going to work counts. They're still going to drive you crazy. They're still going to be tough to pitch to no matter what. And they started that game with 4 walks in the first inning. They get a couple of runs and kind of set the tone. But, and they throw enough strikes, and that was key for Justin Lampkin. I think it was 70 pitches, 54 strikes, something like that over 5 scoreless innings. I mean, that guy has elevated on the biggest stage. Their bullpen remains a huge strength, even when Chris Cortez didn't have it. Their biggest bazooka bullpen arm walks 2 guys and they yank them. Doesn't matter. They got other guys behind them. Here's Josh Stewart spinning this nasty slide piece, and of course Ostenbeck at the back. It's airtight back there. It feels like even if a guy like Cortez is a little shaky, sometimes he can just pitch through that, but if not, they got other guys. And so it's just such a huge strength, those 2 things. And that has allowed them to keep on winning even when it feels like they shouldn't be.
KR, what say you?
Yeah, I was just going to say the big thing with A&M is just kind of going through the stats. I mean, A&M's ERA in 3 games out here is 1. Tennessee 4.67. Granted, Tennessee offense is sitting at a much higher clip, but this just gives you an idea of just how good A&M's pitching staff's been out here. They're throwing strikes. They got the least number of walks of any team in the College World Series field. Teams are hitting 168 against them. And tell you what, when your pitching staff is holding teams to a 168 average, you can have a couple of injuries and be okay because your pitching is kind of leading the way. So it's been pretty impressive.
Joseph.
I'm looking at the Florida side of this, and what a fascinating season this was for the Gators. They ended up where we thought they would be, but boy, they did nothing according to plan, right, within that. And so I think if you're a Florida fan, you're obviously you wanted to get back to that final stage, but I think if you'd have given them, basically a 3rd place finish, I guess is what it ends up being here in Omaha, you kind of take your chances from there. And you say that's a good season. and don't look now. Mark and I talked about this on our podcast that's from last night that's out now. Like the offense is going to take a step back. How could it not? You're losing a generational player and some other pieces, but that pitching staff that all year we talked about, it's so young, it's so young, it's so young. Like those guys are going to be a year older next year. And so, Luke McNeely and Liam Peterson started to show signs. Well, what are those guys going to be? And then you got Philpott and Grayson Smith and Robert Satin and Frank Menendez and on and on and on. That maybe some of those guys saw some time. Some of them didn't see all that much, but they're all going to be theoretically back and better next year. So it could be a deal where, Florida has kind of one of its classic pitching staffs in terms of talent next year. And then it'll just be a matter of what they can do in the lineup.
Yeah, it's just the Florida program. I mean, as you guys just mentioned, Jack Caglione, like one of the most incredible talents in 25 years in college baseball. I mean, the kid hit 75 home runs and made 34 starts on the mound for an SEC program. I mean, just think about how good you have to be at baseball to make 34 starts and also hit 75 home runs. And, feels like if he stays healthy, he'll be a big leaguer forever. I mean, this dude hit a 30-game hitting streak with that type of power. It's just unthinkable. And, for Kevin O'Sullivan, note to self, right? Never take these preseason top 10 teams that end up being 3 seeds lightly. Like they can get hot at any time. Kevin O'Sullivan now has taken them to Omaha 9 out of the last 14 years. Like it doesn't even sound true coming out of your mouth. That Sully's Gators are 9-1 in super regionals, 9-1. Like East Carolina, I'm not picking on you, but they're 0-7 in super regionals. Sully's 9-1. Like it's just so hard. And my final thought on this as we wrap is I'm just pumped to see. I love seeing new coaches and programs in the finals, and for Jim Schlossnagle and Tony Vitello to take those programs to the finals is super cool. It's good for the sport. It's recognition of 2 coaches that are just operating at an elite level. So, yeah, really, really pumped up. And we'll do a preview show live from out here on Saturday. So let's wrap there. Joe, congratulations on your victory today. You were very austere in your victory. So that's it. Everybody enjoy the day off. We'll catch you on Saturday morning for the preview show. And we'll hear you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.